since the Buddha passed away, and since the Buddha turned the 3 wheels of Dharma, taught the 3 turnings of the wheel of Dharma. In that time, then our outer physical conditions we've improved our standard of living very much, but our inner well-being is more or less the same. We still have the same kind of suffering and problems that we've always had as humans, and maybe more. So we need to focus more on developing our inner well-being, mental health, and the basis for doing that, for doing that in the Buddhist teachings is the 4 truths. By learning about, so that's for that purpose, then, for improving our inner state of being. The Buddha taught the four Noble Truths, and he taught first to see the truth of suffering, to see what kind of problems and suffering we experience in our lives, and then the truth of the cause of suffering. To look for the causes of our problems. So the Buddha taught that the cause of all of our problems is basically afflictive emotions, especially attachment and anger, and that the root of all of those, well, the root of attachment and anger and other afflictive emotions is called incorrectly believing concepts, right? So this is where we exaggerate, things that are attractive, we exaggerate the ability of those things to please us. They appear to us as pleasing, and we think that's really how they are from their own side. And that if only I can have that, I'll be happy. And things that we find unattractive, then we exaggerate their unattractiveness and their ability to cause us to suffer. And we think if only I can be away from that, be free from that, then I'll be happy. And then we generate anger towards those things and attachment towards the former, right? So first there's this 4-step process His Holiness usually lays out, where we have ignorance, grasping at ourselves and other things as being truly existent. Then we perceive some things appear as attractive, other things appear as unattractive. When we believe those things to really be that way from the side of the object, right, from their own side. So that's incorrectly believing concepts, where we believe things to be attractive or unattractive from their own side, and believe that by having those things, we can be happy, and by being free from those things, we can be free from suffering. And then on the basis of that, we generate attachment for what we perceive as attractive and aversion to what we perceive as unattractive. So that's afflictive emotions. And then on the basis of that, we generate karma, which then ripens as different afflicted experiences. So this is the truth of suffering, truth of the cause of suffering. Then there's the karma and afflictive emotions, basically. So then, but it's especially important to see, it says that, to see that grasping at inherent existence is the fundamental cause of all those. And especially that's taught in the 2nd turning of the Wheel of Dharma, the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras. And it's only by understanding the 2 truths, conventional truth and ultimate truth, then we can understand how that grasping at inherent existence can be eliminated, and thereby we can achieve, it's possible to achieve. So now I'll jump to my little collection of verses. Here His Holiness quotes from the Heart Sutra. This is the mantra of the perfection of wisdom. Gate gate paragate parasangate bodhisoha. So His Holiness just mentioned that this demonstrates gradually abandon deeper and deeper levels and imprints of the grasping at inherent existence. So generally, gate gate refers to the, His Holiness didn't say, but this is what it means. Gate gate refers to the path of accumulation and the path of preparation. Paragate refers to the path of seeing. Parasamgate refers to the path of meditation. And then bodhisoha refers to the path of no more learning. So then, this whole is continued, and he offers basis, although things appear to and actually existing in that way that they appear, actually they don't exist in the way they appear, and that this is very similar to quantum physics, where quantum physics posits that, although it looks like, on the level of, I guess, subtle particles, His Holiness doesn't usually flush it out, but the meaning is something like, although it looks like, say, particles have a finite location in space, and that they are a particle or a wave from their own side. Actually, when we investigate, quantum mechanics through the methods of quantum mechanics, especially the double slit experiment, then actually it becomes very clear that particles, they don't have a finite location in space apart from the act of observation. So at the time they're not being observed, and they exist in a possibility of places, right? So they exist in a, what is this called? It's basically a wave function where there's a possibility that they exist in different places, and in fact they don't exist in any specific place until the act of observation, and then that act of observation collapses the wave function, and then at that moment they do exist in a specific place. It's something like that. So in short, it looks like in quantum mechanics also, where it looks like particles have an objective or objective reality apart from the observer, actually they do not, right? So there also, it's similar in that things do not exist in the way they appear. And since this is the most fundamental building blocks of all physical things, then you have to assert that the macro scale physical world is also doesn't exist in the way it appears, even according to quantum mechanics. Then His Holiness mentioned this famous verse from the Heart Sutra. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form is also not other than emptiness. So that's here. Saying that, it's important to understand the two. I mean, this shows the two truths, where form represents conventional truth, emptiness represents empty, emptiness represents ultimate truth, and that those all things are dependent arising. So emptiness is a characteristic of all things. All things that exist, form up to consciousness, they're all empty of inherent existence. Why? Because they're interdependently arising phenomena, or because form and up to consciousness, all things exist independence upon, and in relation to other phenomena, independence upon cause and effect, independence upon a collection of parts, and independence upon the act of mental imputation, also independence upon comparison with other things. So, but especially independence upon mental imputation. So thereby, all things are empty of inherent existence, or empty of independent existence, where their existence does not depend upon other things. And emptiness as well, so that's what's being taught in the first, is that form is empty of inherent existence. And then that emptiness of inherent existence is form, is also showing that emptiness of inherent existence is also not an independently existent phenomena, or an inherently existent phenomena, but its existence also depends upon the existence of conventional phenomena, right? So ultimate truth depends upon conventional truth, just as conventional phenomena depend upon ultimate truth. So they're mutually interdependent. And then His Holiness was speaking about how all of, so this teaching was requested by, I think, a Pan-Asian group. I'm not sure the group exactly, but you could see among the people asking questions, there are people from Indonesia, Thailand, Singapore, Hong Kong, Taiwan, and so forth. So, so His Holiness was saying all us people of Asia, especially from China, Japan, Korea, and so forth, are pervaded by the Buddhist teachings. In countries like Burma, Thailand, Sri Lanka, they primarily accept the Pali Canon as the teachings of the Buddha. So even the northern Buddhist countries would take the Pali Canon as the basis of the teachings of the Pali Canon, the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Noble Path, the 10 non-virtuous actions, the morality of abandoning the 10 non-virtuous actions, and so forth. We take that as the basis. And then in addition to that, we follow the Sanskrit tradition, the Sanskrit canon, especially the tradition of ancient Nalanda University, which is based on an analysis of reason, using logic and reason to clarify what exactly the Buddha taught. And within the Buddhist teachings, which are interpretive teachings and which are definitive teachings. And then His Holiness quotes that famous verse, which I think I got in here. Yeah, O bhikshus and wise men, just as a goldsmith would test his gold by burning, cutting, and rubbing it, so you should examine my words and accept them, not merely out of reverence for me. So the Nalanda tradition emphasizes this examining the Buddha's word, examining everything and even what the Buddha taught by reason and logic, and seeing what makes sense, what accords with valid cognition, what accords with reason, and is not internal contradictory, and accept that rather than just merely accepting anything the Buddha says out of respect for the Buddha. So that's really the essence of the Nalanda tradition. So then on that basis, in the first turning of the wheel of Dharma, which primarily is what the Pali Canon consists of, is primarily interpretive teachings. They're interpretive sutras. I can come back to that later if you want, but if I go into detail, then we won't get through the whole thing. Then the second turning of the wheel of Dharma is the definitive teachings, because they teach the emptiness of inherent existence. Whereas the first turning of the wheel of Dharma teaches that everything is inherent existence. The second turning of the wheel of Dharma, the perfection of wisdom sutras, emphasizes using reason and logic to establish what is truth. And this is very much in tune with science and a scientific approach to things. So, yeah, I'm not sure I have in my notes. So there's different kind of dependent arising, cause and effect, but ultimately the most subtle level of dependent arising is dependent arising of things being dependent upon mental imputation. And then His Holiness gave the example of form, because he quoted this from the Heart Sutra: form is emptiness, emptiness is form. That even forms, so you think forms, physical things, then we can analyze that they have color. There's the color, the shape of things, the texture of things, the weight of things, and then the particles, the subtle particles, and the particles can be broken down into sides, north, south, east, west, top, bottom. And then finally, you don't find anything that is that specific form. Rather, you find a collection of parts: the color of the form, the shape of the form, the texture, the smell, the taste, and then the subtle particles that make it up. But then you can't pinpoint anything that is that form, basically, right? You just find a collection of parts, none of which themselves are the whole, right? So that's kind of reasoning leads us into emptiness. That basically, when you search for when you search for the thing which is referred to by terms, you cannot find it. This is unfindable. So this is the view of the Prasangika Madhyamaka view, consequential single way. And then he says, it's only said that Nagarjuna, we should consider him not as important because he's a famous man, or because because he's famous, or there are a lot of miraculous stories about him, but rather because of his writings, which we still have, and we can study, and we can read and study and see what an incredible logician, what an incredible scholar, what an incredible practitioner he is. And then also there's other great, Indian pundits like Chandakirti, Buddha Palita, and so forth, who wrote these profound commentaries on Nagarjuna's main treatise, Fundamental Wisdom. And then His Holiness spoke about how, it's important not to, there's this tradition from Nalanda of, when composing a work, to compose it in 3 sections, where first we refute others' positions, others' philosophical positions, then posit our own philosophical position, and then assert and then deal with or address and abandon arguments against our own position, right? So there's these 3 sections of refuting other people's, refuting the assertions of others, then positing our own assertions, positing our own view, our own school, and then dispelling objections to our own view. So then it's also emphasizing that through this reason of logic, through reason and logic, then gradually we can reduce and eliminate anger and attachment. So while we should respect any other people, no matter who they are, but their views we can argue with and refute their views. And then His Holiness quotes here from Entrance to the Middle Way by Chandrakirti. So this is a verse I haven't heard His Holiness quote before. It's from the very end of, so it's here. It's from the very, very end of Entering the Middle Way. So here Chandrakirti says, this suchness just explained and terrifying, yet people with past habituation will certainly realize it. Others, however, despite vast learning, will fail to comprehend. So here His Holiness said that Chandrakirti is referring to people like especially Vasubandhu, who hold lower tenet systems, that they fail to comprehend. Yeah, so Vasubandhu is a, I mean, he arose just like a Sangha after Nagarjuna. So I guess he rejected Nagarjuna's commentaries, I'm not sure. Thus seeing those other traditions as constructed by the author's own minds, as akin to the treatise that set forth propositions on self, forsake admiration for treaties and systems contrary to this one. So yeah, Chandrakirti is saying, so His Holiness is saying here, while we need to respect, all Buddhist scholars and all practitioners of other traditions, we can reject their philosophical systems if they don't. It's almost, Chandrakirti uses this phrase, forsake admiration. Right? It's like kind of throw out those whose systems are contrary to the profound logic of the Prasangika system. So then His Holiness emphasized it's very important to analyze and use be skeptical, use critical thinking. And then he says the fundamental wisdom is like the parent text for all of us who follow the Sanskrit tradition. In Asia, there's many people who recite the Heart Sutra, like in China, Japan, Korea, Mongolia, Tibet, and so forth. But there's very few people who study it. It's always making a strong point. There's many people who recite the Heart Sutra, but very many people who study and understand the words and the meaning of the Heart Sutra. Then he recounted the story of a Chinese abbot basically saying the same thing. And then His Holiness was saying, I've requested before the groups of people who come to Dharamsala to request teaching from His Holiness, especially from these traditional Buddhist countries. He said, I've requested them before many times to study, to put more effort into studying the sutras, studying the commentaries on the sutras by Nagarjuna, Buddhapalita, Chandrakirti, and others. It says it's not, you don't need to be religious, you don't even need to be Buddhist to study the philosophy of the Middle Way, and also to study the Buddhist psychology, the psychology of ancient Nalanda University, whereby one can understand how to reduce afflictive emotions like attachment, anger, selfishness, and increase positive emotions like altruism, empathy, compassion, contentment, and patience. So it's important that we all try to study these things. I don't know, then His Holiness told the story of not being able to understand some words and when he was trying to memorize Entrance to the Middle Way, and then later realizing how profound those were. Then His Holiness quoted this verse from Aryadeva's 400 stanzas. Just as the body sense power pervades the body, ignorance is present in all afflictive emotions. By overcoming ignorance, emphasizes this, how all afflictive emotions are based on ignorance. Thereby, by overcoming ignorance, we overcome all the afflictive emotions. When dependent arising is seen, ignorance will not occur. Therefore, make effort in every way to realize just this teaching. Right? So His Holiness very often quotes this verse. Almost every, sizable teaching His Holiness gives, he'll quote this verse from 400 stanzas. So this is one we should try to use in our daily practice. And then also this verse, His Holiness quotes again and again and again by Nagarjuna from Fundamental Wisdom, chapter 18, verse 5. It says, by exhausting, so the reason I'm giving you the name of the text and the chapter and the verse number is so that you yourselves then can go and read more about these, and read commentaries on these, and then use them in your own daily reflection and your own daily practice. So Nagarjuna says, by exhausting karma and afflictive emotions, one is liberated, right? So nirvana is achieved. Karma and afflictive emotions come from false conceptions. So false conceptions is what I was calling earlier incorrectly believing concepts. So karma and afflictive emotions come from false conceptions. Those, means false conceptions, come from elaboration of inherent existence is added by the translator, but that's usually what elaboration means, is the elaboration of inherent existence. Means we have imprints of ignorance grasping at an inherent existence in our minds. Through the force of these imprints, things appear to us as if they inherently exist. And then we believe things exist in the way they appear, thereby we grasp at them as being inherently existent. So it's like we elaborate or we project this inherent existence onto things and grasp that being a fact of reality when actually it's not. So false conceptions come from elaboration. As for elaboration, it is ceased by emptiness, or the Sanskrit can also read it is ceased in emptiness. So when we read it is ceased by emptiness, that refers to the truth of the path. And when we read it is ceased in emptiness, that refers to the truth of cessation. So this is an explanation by Lama Tenzin Gyalsey. It's in the footnotes there. Okay, then what's next? Oh yeah, then again, His Holiness refers to quantum mechanics in relation to this, saying that also quantum physicists also say that, you know, when you see the reality of the, you know, what the fundamental building blocks of the physical world is, then you stop grasping at, you know, external physical things like food and other people's bodies and houses and cars. Some physicists say they see in their own minds how that reduces a kind of, you know, this blind belief in that things are as they appear to us, and things that are attractive are really that way. Things that are unattractive are really that way. And it leads to this kind of skepticism, a kind of a little bit of a, I don't know, aloofness isn't quite the right word, but a little bit of a contentment, a kind of not being so, what do you say, drawn, you know, kind of repelled and drawn in by things, but having a kind of more objective and more neutral, more balanced approach to things, something like that. Anyway, quantum physicists also see that things don't exist in the way they appear. Then, so His Holiness then is saying, the more we analyze, the more we can reduce grasping at inherent existence, thereby the more we can reduce afflictive emotions like anger and attachment. Those afflictive emotions, you know, jealousy, anger, arrogant, pride, attachment, they don't have any stable base because they're based on a false belief, right? They're based on this grasping at inherent existence, which is a wrong belief, it's a wrong view. Thereby, when you analyze, though, all those, that basis, ignorance, and all the afflictive emotions, they weaken, they become less and less and less, and they gradually disappear. Whereas love and compassion, I mean, of course, right now, for us, they're mixed with ignorance, grasping at inherent existence, but they don't have that as their basis. So as we see more and more that things are interdependently arising, they don't have any inherent existence. That doesn't reduce our love, our caring, concern about others, and our compassion. So those attitudes are based in the view of the interdependent arising, and thereby they can be increased in conjunction with the, strengthening the wisdom realizing entities. Then, so if we analyze, we can definitely change in a positive way. This is Holiness' conclusion here. Then His Holiness mentioning, yeah, he often reads the auto commentary on entering the middle way to try to contemplate on these things. Then he says, then he talks about modern education. He's saying, you know, modern education, although we're all from Asian countries, so he's speaking for himself and the main audience there in the Zoom room during the teaching, that we're all from Asian countries, but modern education systems that mostly we've adapted, they come from the West, which is a Christian culture, where they accept the belief in a creator God, and they seem to, sorry, this is the right file. Someone's putting in the chat. All right, okay. I think the wrong file was uploaded earlier. The right file seems to be uploaded now. So His Holiness is saying, you know, of course, in the Christianity, as far as behavior, the behavior of nonviolence and loving kindness, compassion, because God is supposed to be the embodiment of perfect love, perfect compassion, universal love and compassion. But the philosophical view is very different, right? So they accept the philosophical view of inherent existence and a kind of soul, truly existent self of persons and so forth. So so it's very important for us from Buddhist cultures to to learn about the view of dependent arising, and then how that gives rise to very profound compassion, compassion for others and non-bias, and concern for other sentient beings. And also how it's important to emphasize the development of inner qualities, qualities of the mind. Knowing how to be kind, generate a kind heart, have harmonious relationships with others, resolve conflicts in a peaceful way, generate altruism and more empathetic concern for others in society, and live in harmony with others no matter what religious beliefs they might have, or the color of their skin, or they're male or female, or they're rich or poor. So therefore, us Buddhists, we need to give more emphasis on intensive study, and then practice based on that study. And also knowing clearly how emptiness and compassion mutually support one another. And then he mentioned that India is an excellent example of people of different religious traditions living together in harmony. The main thing is, and His Holiness concluded this point saying the main thing is to reduce attachment and anger and increase loving kindness and compassion. And then finally, so this is before His Holiness explained the text, he says it's very beneficial to present Buddhist psychology in a secular way, so that it's accessible to everybody in the world, not just those who are Buddhist, and not just those who even profess any religious belief, but rather so the Buddhist teachings on how to reduce attachment and anger and jealousy and arrogant pride and selfishness, and mental distraction also, and then how to increase mental focus, calmness of mind, inner peace, loving kindness, altruistic concern for others, and the wisdom recognizing our interdependence as human beings. It's always mentioned that we're social creatures. Our happiness depends upon having wholesome relationships, constructive relationships with other people. When we have, abrasive relationships, kind of conflict with others, where we're always in competition with others, we're always in conflict with others, we're always doubting others, we're always, belittling or being belittled, or have distrust of others, that creates so much disturbance and unhappiness in our lives. Whereas we have mutual trust with others. We're kind to others and they're kind to us. We have mutual respect for one another. This gives rise to happiness. And this isn't something that's, religious belief. It's something proven by science. It's shown in our universal human experience. So, but that Buddhism possesses profound ways to increase these positive states of mind and positive ways of relating with other sentient beings, and reduce destructive ways of relating with others and destructive ways of thinking. So we need to teach them. Those things need to be taught in a secular way, and thereby be of much greater benefit to sentient beings. So here, to make this point, His Holiness quoted from these two verses that we usually use for generating, aspiring, and entering bodhicitta. Anyway, there's refuge in bodhicitta. So His Holiness often quotes these two lines. In order to fulfill the aims of myself and others, I will generate bodhicitta. Right? So he's simply making the point that the whole point of the aspiration to become enlightened is to benefit sentient beings, including ourselves. So to benefit, in order to benefit ourselves and others. So His Holiness always makes the point that the whole point of our lives, anything we do in our lives, should be mainly to benefit others as well as ourselves, right? So the wise selfishness is to benefit others, and then, by the way, of course, we'll be benefited in this and future lives. And for that purpose, then we aspire to enlighten and try to generate bodhicitta. Right. Okay, so that's the conclusion of His Holiness preliminary comments. And then His Holiness went through the first 25 verses of Thokme Sangpo's text, the 37 practices of Bodhisattvas. So I'll just briefly read through those and then add in just a few comments. His Holiness didn't give much extensive commentary on that. I'll add in a few comments where His Holiness did. And then if you have questions about those, we can come back to it. So this is a translation by Thupten Jinpa, 37 Practices of Bodhisattvas. It's by Thokme Sangpo. It's translated here by Thupten Jinpa. Yeah. So first there's a homage to Lokeshvara, means Avalokiteshvara, the Buddha who's the representative, represents all of the Buddhas, all of the enlightened beings, quality of compassion. I pay constant homage through my three doors to my supreme teacher and protector, Chenrezig, Avalokiteshvara, who, while seeing all phenomena lacking, coming, and going, makes single-minded effort for the good of living beings. So His Holiness emphasized that this verse of homage is very similar to the Nagarjuna's verse of homage at the beginning of Fundamental Wisdom, where he says, you know, that although there's no inherently existent coming and going, production or cessation, one or many, that yet everything exists as interdependent arising. So these, especially the last two lines here, reflect that. Who, while seeing, so Chenrezig, the Buddha of compassion, who, while seeing that all phenomena lack inherent coming and going. So it says lack coming and going, but we have to add the object of negation there, inherently existent coming and going. So while all phenomena are empty, inherently existent, coming and going, and inherent existence whatsoever, yet Chenrezig makes single-minded effort for the good of well-being. So within all phenomena being empty of inherent existence, yet the Buddha of compassion, Chenrezig, strives for the well-being of all, welfare of all sentient beings. So this represents the mutual agreement of dependent arising and emptiness of inherent existence. And then the second verse is the promise to compose the text. So this follows the kind of pattern of the compositions by scholars of ancient India, where there's a homage to a being of extraordinary, what do you say, a holy being in order to accumulate merit. Then there's a promise to compose the text in order to create a condition to be able to finish the composition of the text. So perfect Buddhas, source of all well-being and happiness, arise from accomplishing the excellent teachings. And this depends upon knowing the practices. So I will explain the practices of Bodhisattvas. So it's basically saying Buddhas arise from Bodhisattvas. Bodhisattvas arise from studying and practicing the teachings. To study and practice the teachings, we have to understand them. Thereby, I'll explain these practices of Bodhisattvas. So those are the two preliminary verses. So here from what he labels here as verse 1, starts the actual 37 practices of Bodhisattvas. His Holiness explained Ngulchu Thokme Sangpo's name at the beginning. Ngulchu is the name of a cave where Thokme Sangpo resided for much of his life. So he's called, commonly Tibetans are often called after a place that they're from or where they spend a lot of time. And then Thokme, actually, there's a story about this in Geshe Studies commentary on 37 Practices of Bodhisattvas. Basically, in class, when Thokme Sangpo was in class with one of his teachers, the teacher asked about the meaning of a difficult passage, and Thokme Sangpo was able to explain it clearly. So therefore, the teacher named him after Arya Asanga, right? Asanga, his name in Tibetan is Thokme, right? So the teacher nicknamed him Asanga or Thokme in Tibetan. And then Sangpo is just his given name, both when he was born and also when he was ordained. So he was a contemporary of Bhutan Rinpoche, and he was renowned as a bodhisattva during his own life. His Holiness mentioned that Bhutan Rinpoche, apparently there's a story that Bhutan Rinpoche would sometimes, at least at one point, he had like a wound or something, or an infection on his arm. And he said to Thokme Sangpo, since you're a bodhisattva, then could you blow on this and it will help to heal it? Okay. So then the verse 1. So His Holiness was saying that this composition is laid out according to the three scopes of the beings of the small, great, and middle scopes. That means the three scopes of motivation, or beings of the small, middle, and great path, you could say. So this is beginning with beings of the small scope, talking about precious human life. Having gained this rare ship of freedom and fortune, here think and meditate unwaveringly, night and day, in order to free yourself and others from the ocean of cyclic existence. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. And then verse 2. Attached to your loved ones, you're stirred up like water. Hating your enemies, you burn like fire. In the darkness of confusion, you forget what to adopt and what to discard. Give up your homeland. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. And here His Holiness just mentioned, yeah, it's true. If you stay, with a lot of on the home life, with a lot of relatives and family, then it's you easily meet conditions for giving rise to attachment to wealth and possessions, or to certain relationships, and also becoming angry at not getting what you want, other people doing things to harm you. So therefore, it's easier to generate peace of mind if you live in retreat. As long as mentioned that Thokme Sangpo himself stayed in a retreat place, this Muchu cave. Then verse 3 and 4. By avoiding bad objects, disturbing emotions. So this is the opposite to verse 2. By avoiding bad objects, disturbing emotions gradually decrease. Without distraction, virtuous activities naturally increase. With clarity of mind, conviction in the teaching arises. Cultivate seclusion. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. And 4, loved ones who have long kept company will part. Wealth created with difficulty will be left behind. Consciousness, the guest, will leave the guest house of the body. Let go of this life. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. So this is on impermanence and death, also part of the small scope. And then verse 5. When you keep their company, your 3 poisons increase. Your activities of hearing, thinking, and meditating decline, and they make you lose your love and compassion. Give up bad friends. This is the practice of Bodhisattva. So this is about bad friends, how bad friends cause us to give rise to more of the 3 poisons: attachment, anger, and ignorance. They reduce our positive activities, hearing, thinking, and meditating, and they make us lose love and kindness, love and compassion. So therefore, give up bad friends. Don't spend time with people who have a negative influence on us. And then His Holiness mentions, as he often does, there's a couple lines by Kuntan Rinpoche, which I wasn't able to gather here, but where he says basically bad friends aren't necessarily people with horns on their heads, right? It's not like they wear a sign saying I'm a bad friend, or wear carry knives and chains, but they have they can in a subtle ways have very negative influence on our mind, cause us to be more pessimistic, and so forth. And then verse 6, when you rely on them, your faults come to an end. So again, this is another, these are 2 pairs of opposites. Whereas 5 is talking about bad friends, and 6 is talking about good friends and teachers. When you rely on them, your faults come to an end, and your good qualities grow like the waxing moon. Cherish the spiritual teacher, even more than your own body. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. So this is about relying on a spiritual teacher. So in dependence upon a spiritual teacher, your faults come to an end, and your good qualities grow like the waxing moon. So they increase more and more and more, become more brilliant, more radiant, more beautiful. So therefore, cherish the spiritual teacher even more than your body. So it means, if you have to give up either, being devoted to your spiritual teacher, or give up your body and die, it's better to give up your body and die rather than give up your devotion to your teacher. His Holiness said we need a good teacher who's both, and His Holiness emphasized here, a teacher who's both a scholar and a practitioner. So someone who's both well learned, has studied extensively the text and the teachings of Buddha, and is also a sincere practitioner. Not just someone who has a famous name, or like the name of an incarnate Tugu or something, but they don't, they haven't studied extensively and they don't practice. And then His Holiness quoted from Tsongkhapa here. This is from Tsongkhapa's prayer about his own method of study and practice throughout his life, called Destiny Fulfilled by Tsongkhapa. He says, first, so this is a very famous verse that Gelugpa Lama is often quoted, His Holiness often quotes, which kind of provides an outline, a template for our whole life, right? How to spend our lives. First, I sought out extensive learning. Then all teachings dawned as trainings. Finally, I practiced all day and all night, completely dedicated to spread the teaching of the Buddha. Right? So as Lama Tsongkhapa says, first, in the early part of my life, so for Tsongkhapa, basically up until his mid-30s, I sought out extensive learning. So he received teachings from many different teachers. Tried to study extensively, broadly, all of the Buddhist teachings, all of the sutras, all of the tantras, as much as possible. Then all teachings dawned as trainings, right? So gradually, as he gained a complete understanding of the Buddhist teachings, then he saw how every teaching that the Buddha gave dawned as personal advice, something that oneself can put into practice. Right? So this is a big advantage of Lam Rim. One of the main advantages of Lam Rim, it shows us how all of the Buddhist teachings can be implemented as practice in our daily lives. Then finally, I put effort into practicing day and night as much as he was able. And he completely dedicated all the merit to the increase and the spread of the Buddhist teachings. It was a very beautiful verse by Lama Tsongkhapa. Then, back to verse 7 by Thokme Sangpo. Bound himself in the jail of cyclic existence, what worldly God can give you protection? Therefore, when you seek refuge, take refuge in the three jewels, which will not betray you. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. So this is the outline of refuge from the small scope. And then verse 8. The subduer said, all the unbearable suffering of bad rebirths is the fruit of wrongdoing. Therefore, even at the cost of your life, never do wrong. So this is relating to karma. Right? And then so here, His Holiness commented, let's see. It's just like in ordinary life, if we're kind to others, they'll be kind to us. If we're mean to others, they'll be mean to us. Also, how just like results come from like causes. So if you plant the seed of a fruit that's very sweet, it will give rise to a tree that produces fruits that are sweet. If you plant the seed of a tree that's very bitter, it'll produce a tree which produces fruits that are bitter, right? So like sweet comes from sweet, bitter comes from bitter. Likewise, happiness comes from virtue, unhappiness comes from non-virtue. Then verse 9, like dew on the tip of a grass, means a blade of grass. Like dew on the tip of a blade of grass, pleasures from the three worlds last only a while and then vanish. Aspire to the never-changing supreme state of liberation. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. So those things which we enjoy with our senses, right? Primarily, beautiful things that we see, smell, taste, touch, they vanish like dew on grass, never to come again. They quickly disappear. But rather, so His Holiness emphasized here, we should seek the happiness that comes with the truth of cessation, the happiness that comes from abandoning afflictive emotions at ignorance from their root, thereby generating a lasting, stable peace of mind and a source of lasting satisfaction. Also qualities like loving kindness and compassion. Then, let's see, verse 12. When your mothers who've loved you since time without beginning are suffering. So here we move to the, so that was the middle scope right there, verse 9 is the middle scope. And then it's only one verse. And then from verse 10 on is the great scope. So when your mothers who've loved you since time without beginning are suffering, what use is your own happiness? Right? So when other sentient beings who've been our mothers and fathers and dear friends and siblings countless times since beginningless times, since beginningless rebirths, when they continue to suffer in the lower realms and even in the upper realms, then what is the use of us being free from samsara if we can't do something to help them? Right? When your mothers who've loved you since time without beginning are suffering, what is the use of your own happiness of this life or happiness of even liberation? Therefore, to free limitless living beings, develop the altruistic intention, bodhicitta. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. And then, so here, His Holiness comment a little bit on, what I was saying earlier about how, we're social creatures, we're social animals. Thereby, our happiness exists independent of others. Thereby, it's wise to work for the welfare of others. If we're angry and we dislike other people and we just think everybody else is wrong, I'm right, we isolate ourselves from other people, then we'll be miserable and unhappy. So even modern scientists, study social science, mental health psychologists, even they can see this. So our happiness depends upon having positive relationships with others. And then His Holiness quoted, so this is a really important verse from Shantideva. His Holiness quoted this verse from Shantideva, which he quotes again and again and again. Probably if you memorize one verse from the Bodhisattva's Way of Life by Shantideva, it should be this one. I didn't get this is from, this is from the Patience. I'm not sure actually. No, I think this is from the meditation chapter. Anyway, I didn't get the chapter and verse here. I think it's from the meditation chapter, but I don't know the verse number. Anyway, whatever joy there is in the world, all comes from desiring others to be happy. And whatever suffering there is in the world, all comes from desiring myself to be happy. Right? So it's a really important verse from Shantideva. Excellent. We can memorize it and recite it in our daily practice. And then, there's another verse from Lama Chopa that His Holiness quoted here. Verse 90, the first two lines of verse 94 from Losam Chugi Gyaltsen Lama Chopa. Cherishing myself is the doorway to all loss, while cherishing my mothers is the foundation of all qualities. So loss there means like suffering, all misfortune. Cherishing myself is the doorway to all suffering, right? All faults. While cherishing my mothers is the foundation of all positive qualities. And then it goes on to say, therefore, I should practice exchanging myself and others, the essence of the Buddhist teachings. And then His Holiness continues, commenting with verse 11 here. All suffering comes from the wish for your own happiness. Perfect Buddhas are born from the thought to help others. Therefore, exchange your own happiness for the suffering of others. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. So this is expressed in the same sentiment. And then verse 12. Even if someone out of strong desire steals all your wealth, or has stolen, steals all your wealth, or has it stolen by someone else, dedicate to him your body, possessions, and your virtue, past, present, and future. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. So what an incredible attitude. Can you try to imagine that? Imagine someone steals all of your wealth, leaves you completely destitute, steals your business, steals your home, steals your, all the money in your bank account. We'd be really angry. We'd take them to court, try to find them and send them to jail. But what does a bodhisattva do? Dedicate to them your body, your possessions, and your virtue, past, present, and future. Offer to them everything you have. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. What an unbelievable, altruistic attitude. And then 13, even if someone tries to cut off your head when you haven't done the slightest thing wrong to them, out of compassion, take all his misdeeds upon yourself. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. So again, seeing self-grasping, self-centered, and selfish attitude as the source of all suffering, then even when others mistreat us, we see that their mistreatment of us is actually the result of our own negative karma, of our own past destructive actions. And instead of despising that person, we pray that all of their afflictive emotions, all of their negative karma, may it ripen upon me and thereby destroy the source of all my suffering, my selfish, self-centered attitude. Oops, sorry. Okay, then verse 14. Even if someone broadcasts all kinds of unpleasant remarks about you throughout the 3,000 worlds, in return, with a loving mind, speak of his good qualities. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. And then here's His Holiness mentioned, usually he mentions at the beginning, His Holiness mentioned that he received the commentary on this 37 practices of Bodhisattvas. He received the transmission, and also the transmission not only of the actual the words of the text itself, but also the transmission of the explanation of the text from Kunu Lama Tenzin Gyalsey, right? So that's important to know. So also it's a good habit to make, all of you listening out there, to make a notes of every teaching that you receive, and who you received it from. Like we're receiving this teaching from His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and who that teacher received it from. So one reason for doing that is in the future, you can read all these teachings you received and rejoice. And another is, if you're called upon to explain it to someone else at some point, you can tell them where you received it from. So in that way, you maintain the lineage of the teaching. Okay, then verse 15. There's someone, I need to finish quickly because my time is up. I need to give you time to ask questions now. Yeah, but this one didn't give much more commentary. Though someone may deride and speak bad words of value in a public gathering, look upon him as a spiritual teacher, bow to him with respect. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Even if a person for whom you've cared, like your own child, regards you as an enemy, cherish him specially, like a mother does her child who is stricken by sickness. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Then Shanti Deva, so Shanti, even if an equal or inferior person disparages you out of pride, place him as you would your spiritual teacher, with respect on the crown of your head. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Though you lack what you need, so Shanti Deva, taught that in order to become enlightened, we have to generate the perfection of patience. In order to generate the perfection of patience, we need to have an enemy, someone who mistreats us, so that we can practice patience in the face of that maltreatment. So thereby, the enemy is as much a teacher of us as our actual spiritual teacher. So because without them, we cannot become enlightened. Though you lack what you need, so 18, though you lack what you need and are constantly disparaged, are afflicted by dangerous sickness and spirits, without discouragement, take on the misdeeds and the pain of all living beings. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. 19, though you become famous and many bow to you, and you gain riches to equal Vaishravanas, see that worldly fortune is without essence, and don't be conceited. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. So these are again two kind of a pair of verses. One, if everything's going wrong, he said, don't be discouraged, but imagine that the karma of all the negative karma of all sentient beings is ripening upon you. If everything's going really well, don't become arrogant, right? Then 20, while the enemy of your own anger is unsubdued, though you conquer external foes, they will only increase. Therefore, with the militia, the military of love and compassion, or the army of love and compassion, subdue your own mind. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. And then 21, sensual pleasures are like salt water. The more you indulge, the more thirst increases. Abandon at once those things which breed clinging attachment. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Then 22, whatever appears is your own mind. Your mind from the start was free from fabricated extremes. Understanding this, do not take to mind inherent signs of subject and object. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. So sorry, I said that this is the translation by Thupten Jimba, but it's not. Actually, it's a translation by Ruth Sonam, right? So there's a great commentary on this text by Geshe Studies, who formerly taught at the Library of Tibetan Works in Archives in Dharamsala for many years. His main translator, the English woman, I believe, Ruth Sonam, I believe she's English, she translated this. So this is a translation from a book they published by Snowline, a commentary on 37 practices of bodhisattvas. But actually here in this verse 22, I mean, so you'll notice in the first line, whatever appears is your own mind. So His Holiness mentioned here that actually Thokme Sangpo held more of a mind-only school view. He wasn't really a holder of a pure kind of middle way consequentialist view as presented by Lama Tsongkhapa, but because he existed just in the generation or two before Lama Tsongkhapa, before Lama Tsongkhapa was born, right? He passed away when Lama Tsongkhapa was 12 years old. So at his time, the prevalent view of emptiness was more like an autonomous middle way school of view, where it's thought that everything is one entity with mind, with consciousness. So that's why you'll see in the third line here. So that's why it says whatever appears is your own mind, means everything is one entity with your own mind, as according to the middle way, the mind-only school, which actually is not the case, right? According to the consequentialist school that we accept. Your mind from the start was free from fabricated extremes. Understanding this, do not take to mind. So that inherent is very much added by the translator. It's not at all in the text. So do not take to mind signs of subject and object. So probably Thokme Sangpo is indicating do not take to mind. Actually, in the Tibetan, let me see. In the Tibetan, it actually, I think in the Tibetan, actually, I think it actually reads, do not take to mind that things are, that subject and object are of one nature. Let me just check here. Zanzin Sema, Dani Sheni, Zunzin Sema Nam, Yilamaje. Yeah. It's not clear what it means in the Tibetan, actually. It could be interpreted either way. Anyway. Yeah, but anyway, do not take to mind that subject and object exist in the way they appear. We can say that for sure. Then 23, when you encounter attractive objects, though they seem beautiful, like a rainbow in the summer, don't regard them as real and give up attachment. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. And then finally, I think that's where His Holiness stopped, actually, is here. So I'll just highlight it and then we can remember for tomorrow. So now, if you have any questions, I'll answer them to the best of my ability. If 3 doors refers to body, speech, and mind. May I ask if the 3 doors refer to body, speech, and mind? Yes, generally they do. Although I'm not sure if you were referring to, so this is from, if you're referring to the 3 doors somewhere in the text we were reading, please point it out. And it might be something different, but generally the 3 doors refers to the body, speech, and mind. Yes. Okay. Anthony, are you going to work the unmuting and unmuting here? I suppose so, right? Who is it? Ostejas is raising. I can do it. I can. I'm not sure how to say her name. Ostejas? Anthony? Yeah, okay. I can hear you now.
I want to ask, you was talking about the importance of a spiritual teacher before, but I do not have any Lama or a spiritual teacher with whom I could take refuge in. What you can advise me, where I could find a Lama, for example.
Where do you live?
I live in Lithuania, but I think maybe I can get some support online.
Yeah, there's actually, I mean, where this teaching is being hosted by, Tushita Meditation Center in Dharamsala. We're part of an international Dharma organization called the Foundation for the Preservation of Mahayana Tradition. And I think they have a center in Lithuania, if I'm not mistaken, or definitely nearby. So one thing you could do is, I mean, if you can find a center, FPT or another Dharma center that follows His Holiness the Dalai Lama nearby you, that's excellent. But another option, if you have faith in His Holiness the Dalai Lama, sometimes His Holiness gives refuge online, so you can formally take refuge with His Holiness online occasionally. Like now His Holiness is giving this 3-day teaching. It wouldn't surprise me if on the last day of the teaching His Holiness gave refuge. It's possible.
and how can I can ask His Holiness for refuge? How can I ask him to
Well, I
or
mean, personally, it's, I mean, a little difficult. Like, I mean, you can send an email, but it's not likely you'll get a response. But there are groups, you know, of when there's a groups of students who request His Holiness for refuge, and then His Holiness gives sometimes. You don't need to make a personal request. You can just in your mind think, you know, I'm taking refuge, you know, in the Buddha Dharma Sangha, you know, under the guidance of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. I'm going to take these refuge vows. Now, as if His Holiness offers refuge vows, I'm going to take these vows and keep them. And then from now on, I'll say the Dalai Lama as my teacher. It's more in your own mind. You don't need to actually, you know, have personal communication with His Holiness the Dalai Lama. But of course, you know, it's very, I mean, it's very helpful to actually establish a relationship with a teacher that you can meet, you know, personally. So that's why it's important to, you know, find a Dharma center, if not nearby you, then at least, you know, use your vacation time from work to go to places where you can receive live teachings. Like you can come to Tushita Meditation Center, you know, in Dharamsala. You can go to, you know, Kopan Monastery in Kopan. There's teachings available in Bodh Gaya, usually in the winter. I mean, now everything's different because of the pandemic, but you know, I have to make effort to, you can save up some money, go wherever easy in the world to seek out, you know, enlightened beings, seek out great teachers. And, you know, even just meeting someone like His Holiness the Dalai Lama once in our life for a few minutes, you know, even in a big public teaching, it can profoundly transform our mind, our life.
and can I get your personal contacts if I have some questions or anything? Maybe we can have an email or something.
Sure, you can send an email to Tushita and they'll forward it to me.
Can you write it in the chat, maybe, your email? Or
It's better you write to Tushita and then they'll forward it to me. Yeah.
okay. And can I ask one more question?
Okay. Let me check if others have any questions first, and then
Okay.
if they don't, I'll come back to you.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody else with questions? Antonin, are there any questions from what is it, Facebook or YouTube or whatever? No. Okay. Okay. I'll stage this back to you.
Hello again. I want to ask,
Yeah.
we all intellectually know that we have to feel compassion, you know, like intellectually we know. But for example, when we feel anger or disturbing emotions, we intellectually feel, I have to feel compassion, I'm Dharma practitioner, but our mind just turns us back. You know, you said your mind, I want to go to the left, and your mind said, no, go to the right. And what to do in that kind of situation when we intellectually know, but feeling is different?
Well, then you need to try to see how you can make your feeling change, right? So, I mean, just intellectually having the thought that, oh, you know, even though this, when this person is, you know, irritating me, doing something, and I'm getting angry, see him getting angry, but I'm a Dharma practitioner, I should feel compassion. I mean, that's the start, right? At least before we studied Buddhism, we didn't even have that thought, right? So it's a good place to start. But then we have to, well, first of all, identify what are the ways of looking at that person, you know, that I'm getting angry. Why am I getting angry? What are the causes of me reacting in that way with anger? So for example, anger is always preceded by attachment to something. Either we want someone to do something and then they don't do it, or we're attached to somebody not doing something and they do it, right? So there's always attachment to something, and then other people, they behave in a way, or things happen in such a way that is against what we want, right? Against what we're attached to. And that's why we get angry. So just practicing contentment more, being less attached to having things in a specific way is one way to start reducing anger. Another facet of anger is that we look only at the negative. Like if we're angry at someone, we look at the negative qualities of that person, or the negative side of being treated in a way that we don't like. Whereas there are positive, the person has positive qualities, like the person's potential for full enlightenment, or like that person's desire to be happy, to have happiness and be free from suffering, just like I do. So if we focus on those things which create a connection and create empathy for that person rather than hostility, then that helps reduce anger. Also, we can think like Thokme Sangpo and Shantideva, where I was describing their view earlier, that we need to learn to practice patience. In order to learn to practice patience, we need other people to act in a hostile way towards us. Therefore, when other people treat us in a hostile way, actually in a way that's a great kindness, because they're giving us the opportunity to see our own anger, and also to practice and to see how destructive our own anger is, and to practice not following the mind of anger. But in order, they give us an opportunity to practice enduring the hardship of being ill-treated and reacting with loving kindness and compassion, regardless of the way other people treat us, right? So that's a positive side of being ill-treated. And so, yeah, we need to use our intellect more, not just think, oh, I should be compassionate, I shouldn't get angry, but try to look at how we can change the way we're going.
But if, for example, you are in contact with a person and you feel disturbing emotion, and how to change this feeling? If it's very strong, it's very strong, and you feel disturbing emotion, that you have to feel other way, but you feel different.
Well, that's true. I mean, it's true that in the time at the moment when your mind is completely flooded with, and the disturbing emotion is very powerful. At that moment, it's almost impossible to change, right? That's not really the time to try to change, right? So you need to practice the antidotes, like with anger. You need to practice the antidotes to anger before you become angry, right? So how do we do that? In meditation, you think about past instances when you got angry, and then think how you deal with that situation again, and imagine if you're in a similar situation in the future, what are the different ways to think and that you don't get angry. Rather, you practice patience and practice kindness and compassion. And then you need to practice, practicing patience. You need to practicing loving kindness and compassion, even in reaction to, difficult, when people are mistreating us. So if we don't practice beforehand, we won't be able to do. It's like if we don't practice, I don't know, driving a car. If we don't know how to drive a car, and then we never practice, and then all of a sudden we jump into into an auto race or something, we're not going to be able to do anything. We didn't practice, the skills that we need to drive a car. So it's the same thing with, becoming angry. If we don't practice learning how to be patient, and we don't practice generating compassion, loving kindness, even in the face of, people, very kind of hostile people, then there's no way we're going to be able to give rise to those attitudes, in that situation. So it's basically a matter of practice.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time.
Sure, you're welcome. Antonin, what's going on? How about Dilshad, Lopa, Evelyn? Do you have questions? You're the only people left in the Zoom room. And then, yeah, if we have any questions from people on, I don't know, the people on Facebook and YouTube, can you hear me out there in the virtual world? I can't see you. If we don't, then we'll do a little meditation. Next, I don't know if you guys are still there, because I can't see any of you on your video. I all have your videos off. So I don't know if you really want to do meditation. Yeah. Two persons have raised their hands. All right. Are you guys raising your hands because you have questions, or raising your hand because you're saying, yes, you want to meditate? You can either type it in the chat or Evelyn, why are you raising your hand?
Yeah, hi. Thank you very much for giving us this explanation. It's really helped us a lot. Venerable, can I just ask on verses 8? The subduer said that all the unbearable suffering. May I know who is the subduer referring to verses 8?
Yes, excellent question.
Thank you.
The subduer usually refers to the Buddha.
All right.
Yeah, here it does. The subduer said all the unbearable suffering or bad rebirths is the five, never do wrong. So this is talking about negative karma. So the subduer is the Buddha, because he's the one who pacifies our suffering and the causes of suffering, right?
Right.
So how does he do that? He does that by teaching us the truth. So the initial truth he teaches is the truth of karma and law of cause and effect, that all the unpleasant experiences we have arise primarily are caused by negative karma that we've created in the past, and all the pleasant experiences that we have are primarily caused by virtuous karma we've created. So that's what he's talking about here, the law of cause and effect.
Thank you, Venerable.
You're welcome. Yeah. Okay, Astasius, you have another question?
I see that no one wants to ask, so I always have a lot of questions when it comes to Dharma, so I can.
Good. Am I saying your name right? How do you say your name?
Yes, you saying my name right.
Okay.
I want to ask how to train your mind to be happy when you are in suffering, for example.
How to train your mind to be happy when you're in suffering.
Right.
Well, what do you mean? I mean, there's different kinds of suffering. There's the suffering of suffering, which is like when we're unhappy, basically, we're feeling physical or mental pain. Then there's the suffering of change, which is when we have pleasant mental or physical sensations that are actually in the nature of suffering. And then there's pervasive compounding suffering, which we experience as long as we're in samsara. So
I'm talking about inner suffering, for example, like tensions, fear, stress, and also outer suffering, like for example, unpleasant environment or something like that. I'm talking about inner and outer combined, you know, like your mind, like your outer environment is not pleasant, but you cannot force your mind to be positive, you know. You cannot force your mind to practice Dharma. For example, if in your environment is unpleasant people, it's already bad. It's already bad enough, and your mind making worse out of because you're more and more disturbed.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. As beginners, we need positive influences. It is difficult just to change our minds drastically just through our own power alone. Like that's why we need positive influences. So that's why we can, do things like this, connect with Dharma kind of friends online, like, watch His Holiness, connect with Dharma teachings, like watch His Holiness teachings, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, other teachers online, then try to connect with Dharma friends online, read books also, and try to connect with, all the great Buddhist practitioners of the past, and then also of the present. There's so many different kinds of books, so then take those as support for us. But then all of the Buddhist teachings are all for the purpose of showing us how to transform our own minds. So we do have to, when we're suffering, especially when we're unhappy, or we're unhappy maybe because we're surrounded by people who, they talk in ways we don't like, they think in ways they don't like, they do things that we don't like. Okay, I'm just reading another question that arose in the chat. I'll come back to it. So, yeah, I mean, we have to be gentle with our mind on stages. Like when we're really suffering heavily, then, like say we wake up and we just have one day we're in a bad mood, and then everything goes wrong that day, or we're just in a bad mood. Then, instead of expecting we shouldn't have unrealistic expectations. instead of expecting that we can just sit down and meditate and just be really happy, by the time we're finished with a half hour of meditation, we should recognize that actually why are we in a bad mood? Why are we having really negative mind? It's the result of our negative karma. And practice purification is one thing to do. Recite the names of, do prostration to the 35 Buddhas, recite the Heart Sutra, do Bodhisattva meditation. What?
Bodhisattva also. Bodhisattva.
Bodhisattva, 35 Buddhas, or the Confession of Moral Downfalls. There's different purification practices to do when we're suffering a lot. That helps to lighten the suffering, helps to reduce the negative karma. And then we need to engage in things to produce causes for happiness, like making offerings, practicing generosity if you want. Just like offer water bowls, offer incense, offer flowers on your altar. Go make offerings to the street dogs who live in your neighborhood, or offer your time and service to other people somehow. Oftentimes when we're suffering, we're being very self-centered. We're only thinking about ourselves. So another thing we can do when we're suffering is to think, instead of thinking about how miserable we are, think how fortunate we are. Practice gratitude. Think of the good fortune that we have, just being alive, just having been born a human being, just being in a place where there's relative peace, having shelter, not having to worry about food and clothing, having supportive friends and family. So that can help lift the mind a lot. All right, there's another question in the chat. Someone's asking about just not having interest in doing basic meditation or prayers or reading Dharma or books on a daily basis. What can I do? Like they have like words for a couple days. They feel enthusiastic to do something, and then for a couple days they don't have any interest to do anything. So they lose enthusiasm. Well, I mean, first of all, yeah, I mean, we're all like that. That's kind of par for the course. I mean, I'm in a 20-year study program here. We're kind of expected to study every day, but yeah, after 3 or 4 days of really intensive study, if I push hard, then I can just expect to kind of lose interest for a day or two and just have to relax. I mean, each of us, we have different kind of capacity. So so we do kind of have to pace ourselves. So, I would say, some days you don't feel like doing meditation or prayers or reading Dharma books or anything, but that's okay. Go for a walk and just try to, go for a walk, do some gardening, do some cooking, something you enjoy. And don't try not to totally lose mindfulness of whatever kind of Dharma practice and study that you're focusing on at the time. Try not to totally lose mindfulness of it. Maintain some kind of mindfulness of impermanence, mindfulness of gratitude, mindfulness of generating loving kindness for others, in a very light way, not in a very intensive way, and give yourself a break for a day or two. Just relax and do things you enjoy, and then naturally you feel like going back to it, because your Dharma practice, whether it's prayers and meditation or study and reading and discussion, all of it combined, they should each be things that bring us joy, right? It shouldn't be something that we're doing because we feel like we have to, and we feel guilty if we don't do it. We should be able to find joy in our Dharma practice. If we're not, then there's something wrong with the way we're thinking about it, the way we're doing it. I would, that's why one technique, a small thing that helps is, like I was saying, make a list or journal of the Dharma teachings we received. And when you feel lack of enthusiasm, just look back through a list of all the different Dharma teachings you received, and kind of think how nice it was, to go to, receive teaching there, do this retreat with this person, have this discussion with this person. Or keep a little notebook with like inspiring verses. So when you feel down, you can use it to lift you up. Generally, when our mind is feeling down, it helps a lot to think of our good fortune. and think how much worse, how many other worse conditions we could be in, and how other sentient beings are actually in those conditions, right? How, you know, so think of the people who are, you know, living in Syria now, that's just totally just torn up by civil war. Think of people living in places in Africa where there's risk of famine. Think of people in, you know, South America and other places where they're, you know, like I had a friend whose father just died of COVID-19. My relatives, one of my uncles died of COVID-19, and his family couldn't come together to hold a funeral service for him. So, you know, so many people, I think of, and now where is that uncle now? I have no idea. You know, every day sentient beings die and they take rebirth as a hell being in the animal realm, as a hungry ghost. Think of, you know, what it'd be like if we take a rebirth as an animal, how that would be, you know. The other day I saw a dog on the road, you know, just, you know, many of the street dogs around here are really hungry. I saw a dog on the road licking the feces of another dog, you know, to try to get some food, some nourishment. I think how terrible that would be to be in that kind of state. So when our mind is really down, it really helps a lot to think of our good fortune. So often, you know, there's very simple things that we're fortunate, like just being able to have access to internet, to have electricity, have enough affluence to have a, you know, a smartphone, a computer, be able just to be able to use language and understand concepts. There's so many simple things that we take for granted, that it helps when we're feeling uninspired and down. It helps to think of those things. So those are a few things. Then His Holiness, I think. Okay, so there's another question here. His Holiness said today that whether things exist or not depends on an observer. Without an observer, there is no object. I understand that to remember the interdependence of things prevents us from falling into a nihilistic view. But can you please elaborate on all appearances are your own mind? Thank you. Yeah, so that's the most controversial line probably from the whole text, 37 Practices of Bodhisattvas. So yeah, let me just read it again. So His Holiness said, whether things exist or not depends upon an observer. Without an observer, there is no object. So that's true. I mean, because what is an object? An object is something that is observed, right? So if something is not observed, it's not an object, right? So object and some, like, just like for a person, if they don't observe anything, then they're not an observer. But actually by the very fact of having consciousness, of having awareness, like the nature of awareness is to experience things, right? So just like the nature of a mirror is to reflect things. So you can't have a mirror and it not reflect anything, right? A mirror by its very nature, it reflects things, right? So that's its nature. So the nature of a mind is to experience objects. The object can even be that mind itself, but the mind experiences objects. And the nature of an object is that it is something which is experienced, right? I mean, a way to try to get deeper into this is to try to really imagine, is it possible for things to exist without there being any awareness of existence at all, right? Like what would be the difference between, you know, things existing in a world where there's no consciousness, there's no awareness, and there being no existence at all? It's like, I mean, definitely from the Buddhist point of view, existence entails awareness of it, right? As soon as there's awareness of something, then there is existence. If there is no awareness at all, there's no consciousness at all, then there is no existence. It's meaningless to say that there is existence. Although at specific times and places, you know, we can definitely challenge that. But in short, it's just like what do you say? Like someone becoming a coach. I never thought of this example before. I never used this example before, but I'll try it out. You know, imagine like my dad was, when I was growing up, I played soccer or football in Europe, soccer in the US. But at one point he coached the team I was playing on, or was an assistant coach. So, but my father, he's not inherently a coach, right? Nobody is inherently a coach. how does someone become a coach? Is they start functioning in that role. They go to practices with a team and they kind of give instructions and organize different exercises and drills and stuff that the team does, and thereby they become a coach, right? So a coach exists independent upon there being a team and some sport, right? And the people of the sport having a coach, it depends upon them being coached by that person. So the players and the coach, you can say, are kind of mutually dependent. Just like an observer and the object are mutually dependent. So you're saying you understand that, so I probably didn't need to explain all that just now. But actually, I think I'm totally getting off my timetable here. But then you said, but to remember, I understand that to remember the interdependence of things prevents us from falling into a nihilistic view. Right, so interdependence prevents us from falling into nihilism. But can you please elaborate on all appearances are your own mind? Yeah. So I'll jump back to our text here. And then we'll do some meditation, actually. I think that's around verse 20. Oh yeah, 21, 22, there it is. Verse 22, whatever appears is your own mind. Yeah, so I was saying this Gyalsey Thokme Sangpo, the author of this text, he actually holds the view, which is more like a mind-only school view, where everything that exists is like a dream, right? So just think how, when you have dreams at night, the things that you experience in your dreams, like when you see people in the dreams, or you see, places or colors and shapes of things, when you hear sounds, you have conversations in the dream, do those actually have any external reality? No, they're all just projections of our own mind, right? So for the mind-only school, and our waking reality is just like that. The things that appear to have external existence, like the things we see and hear and smell and taste and touch, those things actually don't have any external existence at all. They're 100% projections of our own mind, as much as the objects in our dream are. So therefore, it's not that those things are our mind, but they are appearances created by our mind or cast by our mind. So that's what he's saying there. So therefore, he's saying, don't believe in this illusion that things exist separately from our mind. So whatever appears is your own mind. He means that what I just explained. Your mind from the start. Then what is the nature of aggregated extremes? So there he's talking about something different. That your mind is free from, we can interpret it to mean that your mind is free from having any inherent existence on its own. But actually he probably means something more like your mind it also doesn't exist independently of its parts or independently of being an object of consciousness as well. Something like that. Understanding this, do not take to mind, so it means do not believe. And then see here, the translator added this big qualifier, this object of negation, inherent signs of subject and object. But Thokme Sangpo, it's doubtful, it's very debatable whether that's what he has in mind when he wrote this. This is the practice of Bodhisattva. Yeah. Okay, anyway, okay, good, I'm glad it was helpful. Thank you for the feedback. I need that because I don't know what it was. So let's meditate a little bit. Actually, we've gone way over time with question and answer, which is probably okay. So we'll try to stay more within the time parameters tomorrow. So we'll skip the discussion group for tonight, and then and we'll try to do it tomorrow night. But we'll do a little meditation now together. So so get comfortable where you are. I'll try to get comfortable where I am. So can unplug the earphone. So as you get your body comfortable in a position, you can stay still for about 15 minutes to meditate. Gradually draw your awareness in. Focus your awareness either on your breath or on your mind itself, if you feel confident with that, if you're familiar with the nature of your mind, the conventional nature of your mind. The mind is that which is clear and known. So focus on one of those two objects, I would suggest. Either just the sensations of breathing as you breathe naturally, or on your mind, and try to practice placement meditation for a couple minutes in order to generate some kind of focused awareness and clarity of mind before we do some analytical meditation. So when you see, so once you determine your object of placement meditation, then try to keep your attention, with mindfulness, try to maintain an unbroken stream of awareness solely of your object of meditation. And with vigilance, watch to see if your attention is wandering off to look at something else with the force of attachment or lethargy. And then if you see your mind start to wander off, try to catch it immediately and bring it back to the object of meditation. And then again, try to maintain an unbroken stream of awareness for as long as you can each time. So try to practice placement meditation like that for a couple minutes. And then let's do a little analytical meditation on dependent arising. Maybe we'll get towards emptiness. I'm not sure we'll really get to emptiness, but when we meditate on different kinds of dependent arising, then we're building up a basis to gradually understand emptiness. So this is something His Holiness emphasizes and encourages and requests us to meditate on, to reflect on, to study about again and again. So let's just begin in the present moment by looking at impermanence. Look in the present moment. Let's begin with our experiences of the sense consciousness. Okay. So reflect how, maybe sounds is a good place to begin. Just in the present moment, be aware of the sounds that you hear. Right? And be aware of how in each moment, new sounds arise. And as soon as they arise, from that very moment, they're changing and passing away, disintegrating and disappearing. And then just like those sounds arise and pass away in each moment, also our ear sense consciousness, our awareness of those sounds in each moment is arising and passing away. So try to generate that awareness for a couple minutes. Looking at the impermanence of sound on each moment. Sounds and the experience of sounds by our ear consciousness is continually arising and passing away. Right? And then let's look at how to focus on physical sensations in your body. Feelings of hot or cold, pleasure, smoothness, roughness, or pain. Just focus on all the different physical sensations arising in your body and how they're similar to sounds. You can also be aware of the sounds at the same time, but how they're similar in that they arise. There are new sensations continually arising, And from the very first moment they arise, they're already changing and passing away. And so how there's this unbroken stream of arising and passing away of not only sounds and the experience of sounds, but also physical sensations and the experience of those sensations. So focus on that for a minute or two. And then look at how, so each moment, those experience of sounds, the sounds and the experience of sounds, physical sensations and the experience of those, how they pass away and new ones arise. Mm. So then look at how in the present moment, so the past, what's past is gone. So in each moment, there's the past experiences that have gone away, the previous ones, they passed away. They'll never arise again. Future experiences haven't arisen yet. And look at how in the present moment, there's no stability, right? There's nothing that's fixed and remaining, but rather our experience of sounds, our experience of physical sensations, even our experience of thoughts and feelings, our experience of our own mind, and ourself as a person, how we're continually changing without pause. What's present is becoming past, and what's future, what hasn't become, is coming into being newly. So we'll spend a moment just reflecting on kind of that whole process for oneself, one's body, one's mind, oneself as a person. This continually changing nature that we have. And then broaden your perspective out to encompass other sentient beings like ourselves, our parents, our siblings, our children, our friends, extended family, all the other human beings, all the other animals, whatever kind of sentient beings there are on this planet, in this universe, in the world, the entire world whatsoever, and also the inanimate environment. So think how the whole world is continually changing in this very moment, right now. All the past moments, since billions of years ago, have completely gone. They're like the dreams from last night. They'll never arise again. But yet they've given rise to this present moment. And this present moment is producing each subsequent moment. Moments that are coming into being. So finally, let's dedicate. So in the midst of all this change, ourselves changing, the world changing, remember, rejoice in all the whatever virtues merit we've created together during this session. Whatever merit His Holiness the Dalai Lama and our other teachers have created. All the merit created by all our Buddhist brothers and sisters and all sentient beings throughout the universe. So rejoice in all the good things people do. Have done in the past, do now, will do in the future. Especially in the life and the teachings of Thokme Sangpo, Lama Tsongkhapa, and all the Buddhist masters back to Shakyamuni Buddha himself. So through the force of this oceans of merit collected together, may the Buddha's teachings flourish for a long time. Especially may His Holiness' vision of offering the Buddhist psychology and Buddhist philosophy in a secular way so that it can benefit countless more people than those who have in religious faith. May it come to be. May all the different programs and research institutions, educational institutions, and individuals who are helping support His Holiness' vision to bring the wisdom of interdependent arising and compassion in a secular way to the world. May all of that have flourish. In short, may every sentient being's activity to reduce the suffering and the cause of suffering and to increase happiness and well-being and causes of those, especially, may all of that flourish. May all sentient beings, in short, be free from every form of suffering and every happiness of deliberation and full enlightenment. And may all of our actions not cause even the slightest harm, but only contribute to the long-term well-being of ourselves and others. Okay, thank you very much. We'll conclude there. So His Holiness teaching again tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock Indian Standard Time. And we'll be reviewing his teachings tomorrow night again from 7 to 9. Okay, bye-bye.